recording button. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. And my name is Nico, and Nikolai, if you're my mother. And thank you for joining us to our first webinar of 2025. It is a great time seeing some familiar names popping up. So we're excited to have you, and we're excited to explore today how this landmark study, and our speakers will definitely go into detail as to why I'm calling it a landmark study, and how our lighting can be enhanced for the safety and satisfaction of our aquatic facilities. A little bit of webinar etiquette. If you can please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off, it'll help when we upload it to the website a little bit later. We do encourage you to use the Q&A feature or chat box, although I will err on the side of chat box. I will be addressing those questions in order as they come in. If you experience any technical difficulties, please message me directly through the chat feature, or Anne, if you're familiar, she is a whiz. The session, again, is being recorded, and it will be shared on the Lifesaving Society website. To view today's webinar, as well as some past webinars, you can always go on the website, go to the Safety Management tab at the top of the homepage, and then you can click Resources. If you're anything like me, just Google LSS and webinars, and it should be your top search. But enough about this. Let's get to the important part, our speakers. So they are two experts with a wealth of knowledge that have blended our physical world, one that both our noses and our eyes are very familiar with, and they blended it in with a theoretical in an effort to assess the lighting and compliance and safety of all our indoor aquatic facilities. So first on our docket, we have Dr. Chun-Yip Han. He is an associate professor with the School of Occupational and Public Health at TMU, and a branch that's actually near and dear to my heart. And he has been a dedicated faculty member since 2012. Dr. Han's academic journey includes degrees, and that's degrees with an S, from across Canada, and he has further advanced his expertise by earning a PhD in occupational and environmental hygiene from the University of British Columbia. With over 25 years of experience as an occupational hygienist, Dr. Han holds prestigious designations as a Certified Industrial Hygienist, CIH, and a Canadian Registered Safety Professional, a CRSP. So he's certainly beating out my email signature. His research spans a variety of occupational health and safety concerns, from healthcare worker exposures to chemotherapy drugs to safety challenges in food manufacturing. In recent years, his focus has expanded to include occupational and public health issues specific to pool environments such as noise, indoor air quality, and of course, lighting. His work on exposure assessments and risk evaluation has positioned himself as a leading authority on mitigating the hazards in aquatic facilities. Joining Dr. Han is Allison Pan. She's an industrial hygienist with WSP USA, one of the world's leading engineering and environmental consulting firms. I'm not going to lie, I had to Google what WSP was. Allison brings a unique blend of expertise in public health and mining to her role, offering a broad perspective on the occupational health and safety challenges across various industries. If it's one thing I know about mines, is that you need light, so she was quite fitting for this. She is a proud alumni of TMU's Occupational Health and Safety program, and also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from McGill. Allison's professional background is marked by a commitment to identifying and addressing health and safety risks in complex environments, so much so that she's taking this meeting and this presentation from Arizona, where she's deployed to work. So together, Dr. Han and Allison will guide us through their findings on the recent pilot study on lighting adequacy in indoor pools, shedding light, pun very much included, on how proper illumination influences safety standards, operational compliance, and the overall satisfaction. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Han.
Thank you very much, Nico, for the wonderful introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. So again, our title of our project is Pilot Evaluation of Lighting Conditions in Indoor Swimming Pools. Before we begin, just want to give you some context as to how this study came about. I've been collaborating with the Lifesaving Society for about a decade now. Primarily, my contact has been Michael Shane. And over the years, we've done a number of projects related to health and safety within aquatic facilities. So we have looked at mold, we have looked at noise, we have examined air quality, we have conducted legislative scan, and as a result of COVID, we also looked at operational impacts as a result of COVID. So we've done a number of projects, we've been very successful, and this is just a continuation of some of the work that we've been doing over the years. Typically, these projects are undertaken by a senior undergraduate student, and Allison was a student who was selected for this particular project that was conducted in 2023 to 2024. And as Nico mentioned, Allison recently graduated from that program last year. And so we are very happy to be here to share our findings. So next slide, please. So for the next little bit, just going to provide an overview of an introduction, background, why we undertook this study, as well as the various research objectives. Then I'll pass it over to Allison, who will talk about the various research methods, summary of the results. She will also summarize the discussion as well as key takeaways. And we're also going to provide some recommendations to you as facility operators, and then we will open up the floor for question and answer. Next slide, please. So before we begin, just want to do a poll. And if you can, or Nico, if you can start the first polling question, we want to engage the audience. The question is, have you ever thought about how the quality of lighting in public spaces impacts safety, comfort, and satisfaction? The answer options are A, never, B, rarely, C, sometimes, D, often, and E, always. So once the poll is up, you can start responding to that.
Another 5 seconds for those who haven't answered quite yet. All right, sharing results now.
Okay, so thank you very much for participating in this question. So it looks like almost 50% said often, and then about a quarter of the participants have said sometimes or always, so which is great news. And so hopefully that's an indicator of why you are attending today. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So the next question is, have you ever wondered, or I can't see anything here. Have you ever wondered whether the lighting levels of the pool where you work or visit meets the local regulatory standard? Again, the answer options are A, never, B, rarely, C, sometimes, D, often, or E, always. So if Nico, if you can put the poll up again, please.
Everyone's on the ball. I'm getting some real quick responses here. A little bit more of a mixed bag. Sharing last 5 seconds. Get your answers in. All right, sharing here.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So it looks like we've got about a third of you, sometimes a third of you often. Some people, 21% have indicated always, and there's a few number who have said never or rarely. Regardless of how you responded, hopefully this presentation of our study will help you realize that there may be some gaps with regards to your particular facility with respect to lighting. And we will provide some recommendations as to some of the things that you might want to consider to ensure that the lighting levels are adequate in your facility. So next slide, please. So in terms of lighting in public places, I think we all understand that's very important, regardless of whether we work there or visit the space, a public space, not just pools. It could be a community center, a library, a government office. It is important that the lighting is available, that it's suitable, because it does enhance safety and well-being as well as users' experience. So for instance, if you're in a facility that's very dim, it's very hard for you to see that building, especially if you're not familiar with that particular building. If you're in a workspace where you're working and the lighting is inadequate, you might strain a little bit, or if it's poorly designed, there might be glare, which might cause headaches or other health effects. So there's a number of reasons why adequate lighting is important with regards to that piece. And also sufficient lighting certainly reduces accidents. We all know how important it is when we're walking that we need to make sure if there's, let's say, a wet spot or uneven flooring, we need to make sure that the lighting is adequate so that we can see any of these potential hazardous situations. And then lastly, specifically for aquatic facilities, it's important that there is sufficient lighting so that the lifeguards can do their job to monitor the swimmers and recognize anyone who might be in distress. Next slide, please. So in terms of the literature, what has been studied, there has been a number of studies which has looked at outdoor lighting, particularly on streets and roadways. And we all know what that's like when we're walking home at night or driving at night. I know that on my street, one of the street lights, the bulbs was out, and it made a big difference in terms of what you could see. So that's why it's important to have proper lighting in terms of how much lighting you have, as well as how spaced out they are so that people can see in front of them. In terms of office lighting, I've already mentioned the importance of having adequate lighting at a workstation so that you don't get the glare. You have sufficient lighting so that you can see your screen or do writing, whatever it might be. And then in terms of sports facilities in particular, so we broadened it out to sports facilities, not just aquatic facilities. There has been some research done with regards to basketball courts, badminton courts, but unfortunately, our research found that there hasn't been anything necessarily, or there's a dearth of literature related to lighting in aquatic facilities. Next slide, please. So, sorry, I think we're missing a slide there. There should be something called gaps in research. Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned, in our literature review, there is no research available which has addressed the adequacy of lighting in indoor pools within Canada. And also, there is no study looking at the compliance. So when I mean compliance, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, we're looking at what the minimum requirements are as stated by the legislation, which I'll talk to you about in the next slide. But that's what we're talking about here in terms of compliance. Are facilities meeting the minimum requirements? And then lastly, there's very limited research regarding the perceptions of users with regards to lighting within indoor pools. So how do people who either work there or visit the pool either as a swimmer or a family member, how do they perceive the lighting levels? Okay, so next slide, please. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the legislation, there is a piece of legislation in Ontario, which is the building code, specifically section 3.11.10.1, which requires a minimum of 200 lux in specific parts of an aquatic facility. Namely, they list the pool deck, the dressing rooms, the locker rooms, the shower rooms, washrooms, and passageways. I know a number of you are participating from another province, so you would have similar pieces of legislation. I'm not sure what the minimum requirements are, but that's something that you would look up. But 200, just for your information, is very similar to the requirements of this European standard here on the bottom bullet, and that is for specifically aquatic environments. So for those of you who aren't familiar with, a lux is basically measuring of the light intensity. And the term that you might be familiar with is illumination, and that's what's listed in the public pools legislation in Ontario. They state that it needs to have adequate illumination, but they don't give a definitive value. And so that's why we refer to the Ontario Building Code, because of the fact that they actually specify a minimum value that needs to be met. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we're skipping slides again. We should be back. Oh, sorry. Sorry, we should be on study objectives. Sorry about that. I'm looking at my slides, and sorry, that's my error. So in terms of the study objectives, we had two main objectives. The first is determining the perceptions and attitude of both staff and visitors regarding the lighting levels. And then the second one, which was looking at the actual lighting levels in lux of the various facilities and ensuring that they complied with the Ontario Building Code. Again, the number we're looking at is 200 lux. Next slide, please. So in terms of how do we meet objective number one, which are the perceptions and the attitudes, we developed a survey and we issued it out to individuals that were at the pool. Either they were workers or they were visitors or possible pool users as well. And the next slide. In terms of the second objective, which was measuring lighting levels, we collected lighting measurements using a digital lux meter. Next slide, please. And so for those of you who are not familiar with how to use a lux meter, just want to show you a quick video. Caveat is that this video is not the same instrument that we used for the study. I couldn't find a brief video on that, so I just found the next best thing. Lux meters are very similar to one another in terms of their basic features. Some have some recording capability, but again, it's how you take measurements. This is a video will demonstrate that. So Nico, if you can play that video, please.
Hi and welcome to another instrument choice support video. In this video, we'll demonstrate how straightforward it can be to measure the light levels in your workplace. Lighting from natural and/or artificial sources needs to be provided for employees to ensure working conditions are safe and adequate for the work type being performed. This graph provides some examples of the Australian standards for the recommended illuminance for various types of office activity. As you can see, the more difficult the task, the higher the recommended lux level. Measuring around the instrument choice office, we expect to have lux levels ranging from 240 to over 400 lux. Inadequate office lighting may cause visual discomfort, headaches, and more. On the other hand, optimal office lighting is attributed to better performance and lower levels of eye strain. When you want to measure light levels, it's critical to determine the best light meter for your needs, as not all light meters measure all types of light. A good example is LED light. To measure the lux levels around the office, I'm using the IC TTV335 due to its wide lux measurement range, adjustable colour temperature, and photodiodes which are sensitive to artificial light, making it suited for measuring LED lighting, which we have here. When the correct light meter for your application is selected, measurements are straightforward. To determine the lux value, remove the sensor cap and place the light intensity meter onto the surface you wish to observe. For work settings, this will be on the work surface, such as a desk. Measuring the horizontal working area will provide an accurate representation of the light intensity reflected in the person's eyes when the surface is in use. Record the measurement, being sure that your body is not accidentally shading the sensor at any stage. Our writing desk has a lux level of between 392 to 403, which is pretty spot on. A second desk with the lights switched off is, as you can imagine with the light switched off, lower than the ideal lux level. This level would likely be too low for prolonged use and could result in eye strain. Where the working area is unknown, for example change rooms or any desk-free work areas, measure at a constant height from the floor, around 75 centimetres. And if the working area is large, it's handy to have a meter with minimum and maximum data retention so that you can get a good overall idea of the light in the entire work area. And that's how to ensure light levels are adequate in your home or office. For more information on light meters or for help finding the best light meter for your application, speak with an instrument choice scientist. Call 1300 737 871 or see the additional contact details in the video description.
Okay. So we can go next slide, please. Great. So that ends my portion. So I will pass it on to Allison, who did most of the work anyway, but I'll still remain for any Q&A at the end of the presentation. So over to you, Allison. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Han, for kicking off the presentation, and thanks for Nico for the great introduction. And I welcome everyone to joining us today. So now let's discuss the research methods used in this study. Our research was conducted across 6 Class A public indoor pools within 1 municipality in Ontario. To To gather data, we use two key methods, like Professor Han mentioned earlier, because we have to answer two objectives. So these two key methods are A for the survey, and the second one is for the lighting measurements. So first, we survey participants. The survey were distributed in person between January 18 to February 21st in 2024, which is last year. We used a convenient sampling approach, meaning that participants were selected based on their availability and willingness to participate at the time of data collection. And for lighting measurements, the measurements were taken during both daytime, starting from 9 a.m. in the morning to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And we have the nighttime measurement, which is starting from 6:30 p.m. onwards. And all these lighting measurements were collected from multiple locations throughout each of the pools. Next slide, please. All right, now let's take a closer look at how the survey was designed to address our first objective. So the survey was structured into two main parts. We have part A and part B. So part A consists of the demographic information. We collected demographic details from participants, including their gender, age, and their role at the facility, whether they were visitors or pool staff. We also gather information like how frequently they visited the pool, their reasons for visiting, and whether they use any visual aids such as reading glasses or glasses in general. This information can really help us understand the background of our participants. And for part B, we focus on participants' perception of lighting in different areas of the pool facilities they were in. So we used a Likert scale, which allows participants to rate their experiences on a scale of 1 to 5. Specifically, we asked about lighting conditions in areas such as the shower area, dressing room, passageway, and the main pool area. Next, please. So here's an example of our part A of the survey. And next. And this is the questions we use for the part B of the survey. So these questions really try to understand how participants perceive the lighting level in the pool they were in at that time. So let's look at question 1. We asked, how would you rate the lighting in the main pool area at this facility? So participants could respond using a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 indicating very poor lighting condition and 5 indicating excellent lighting. This structure approach can really help us with the quantifiable data on how participants perceive lighting conditions throughout the facility. Next. Now let's talk about the method we use to answer objective 2 of the study. To quantify lighting conditions, we measure lighting levels across the 6 pool facility using a digital lux meter, similar to the one you guys saw in the video earlier. So these measurements were taken during 2 time periods to capture variation in lighting conditions throughout the day. So we have the daytime measurements and the nighttime measurements. Daytime measurements were conducted between 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., like I mentioned earlier. This captured the combination of natural light and artificial light present in the facility. And for nighttime measurements, these are the measurements that was taken after 6 p.m., which were only the artificial lighting. And throughout the measurements, the lux meter, like this one you saw on the slide, was held at chest level, and the measurements were recorded approximately every 2 meters apart as per the lighting assessment guideline outlined in the Canada Occupational Health and Safety Regulations. Next, please. Now let's take a look at the survey results, and we can start with the participant demographics. Next. So in total, we have 92 participants completed the survey, and these participants were divided into two groups. We have the visitors and the pool staff members. We have 59 participants, which is about 64.1% were visitors, and 33 participants were the pool staff members. And for age distributions, the majority of the participants were under 49 years old. And in terms of visit frequency, most visitors reported attending at the pool at least once a week. On the staff side, we had different staff members, including lifeguards, instructors, administrators, and facility maintenance personnel. And these individuals interact with the pool environment regularly as well. Next. So now we have a clear understanding of who participated in the study. Let's move on to the key findings regarding the perceptions of lighting in the indoor pools. So this chart here shows participant ratings of lighting conditions in 6 key areas. The pool area during the day and the night, the shower area, dressing room, passageway, and the main pool area. And the responses were categorized as poor, which is in red, fair in yellow, good in green, and non-applicable in orange, which represents some participant who did not provide rating for that specific area. So we can look at these area one by one here. Let's start from the main pool area on the bottom here. So many participants, okay, so for main pool area, many participants rated this area as good, with very few reporting poor lighting. And the second from the bottom, we have the passageway. The passageway received the highest number of fair ratings among all areas, while most participants still rated the lighting areas as good. This may suggest that some participants found the lighting areas in the passageway it's somewhat inadequate. And then we have the dressing room. The dressing room and the shower area received mostly good ratings, and these two areas received the highest number of good ratings compared to other areas. So if you look at the green bars for these two areas, we can see that 70 people rated the dressing room as good, and 74 people rated the shower area as good in terms of lighting. And what's interesting is that the shower area has 0 poor rating, which means they think the shower area has really good lighting. And then lastly, the pool area during light time received the highest number of poor and fair ratings compared to other areas. If we compare the rating between pool areas during nighttime versus pool area during daytime, we can see that pool ratings for the pool areas double at nighttime, indicating in the red bars here. So it really jumped from 4 people rated this area as poor to 8 people rated this area as poor for nighttime. Next, please. And here's the example of the schematic I used during the lighting measurement. So I used the digital lux meter to record the data, and then I would write it down on the schematic of each pool. Next, please. And here's the example of the change area in terms of the raw lighting data. So after all the data were collected, they were transferred into Excel for further analysis so that we can compare the results across locations and assess compliance with regulatory standards, which is the 200 lux. This one you guys looking at here, so the numbers are entered into Excel with the yellow highlights measurements that's under 200 lux. Next, please. And this chart here shows the average lux level for both daytime and nighttime at each of the 6-pool facility. And we use their average lux to compare to the Ontario Building Code requirement, which is the 200 lux. And the red line here represents the minimum required lighting level, so which is the 200 lux. And if we look at this chart side by side, we can tell that Site 8 has the highest average lux compared to the rest of the other sites. And we can tell that average lux level across all sites max the 200 lux requirement. So all of these sites actually met the requirement if we look at their average. But site F has the lowest daytime site average, which is about just a little bit over the 200 lux. And this chart here shows the percentage of the non-compliant lighting measurements recorded at each site. So even on average, all sites met the 200 lux requirement. But when we look at it proportionally and look at the percentage of the non-compliant, we can tell that some areas are not performing as good compared to the other sites. And here, oh, sorry, I haven't finished yet. So the higher percentage here indicates a greater proportion of area within the facility that did not meet the minimum lighting requirements. So if you look at site F here, so site F has the highest percentage of the non-compliance compared to other pools. And what's interesting is for site A, we can see the non-compliant level jump from 4% during daytime to 23% during nighttime, which can means that during nighttime, the lighting level is not really great for site A, and it might indicate some improvement needed for this site. Next, please. And now let's talk at some of the key findings for the study. Next. So for the survey part, we know that majority of the people rated the lighting as good overall. And 2 areas, the shower area and the dressing room area, had the highest satisfaction levels, which we saw on the graph earlier. And for main pool area during daytime, that was also rated well. 58 people said the lighting was good. But what we found at nighttime levels is really perceived as insufficient, because we can tell the pool rating in the main pool area double at night from 4 people rating that area as poor to 8 people rating that area as poor. Next. So even though the average lighting level met the 200 lux standard, but we can tell that the passageway and the nighttime level really need improvement for most of the facilities. And we can tell from the chart, knowing that the variation there's variation in compliance. Some pools have higher non-compliant level versus some pools have less non-compliance percentage. Highlight there's a inconsistency between different pools. So some of the key takeaways from the survey, even though most lighting were rated as high in shower and dressing room, the passageway and the main pool area received lower rating at night, and the pool rating for the main pool area double at night compared to daytime, which suggests there could be issues in the evening. Maybe the lighting is not enough, and that can really have an impact on lifeguard surveillance and swimmer safety during nighttime. Next. And here's the key takeaways from lighting measurements. Even though the average lux level met standard, like we saw on the chart earlier, but it really did not account for the non-compliance in some specific area, so that we know certain percentage, a proportion of the area is really not in compliance. And there's inconsistency um, throughout different pools and different areas in terms of lighting as well. And now some of the recommendations we can have is to encourage you guys, maybe your public health inspector, maybe your pool operator, or people who are working at the pool. Your main job is to really, go out there and safeguard the health and safety of yourself and the users, right? So it's always good to make sure there's minimum of 200 lux in our area, but not only during daytime, but also at nighttime, and make sure we're not only taking measurements on pool deck, but we also include other areas across the facility, which is, the passageway or the shower area. And it's important to do regular lighting audits to identify some of the areas and to address non-compliant spots. Like if you notice, the light is out of light bulb or the light bulb is out, maybe it's important to replace it as soon as possible and communicate with um, the maintenance team of the facility. Next, please. While our study focused on general lighting conditions within pool facilities, there are several additional aspects that could be explored in the future research to enhance our understanding of lighting effectiveness and safety in aquatic environment, right? Some of these examples could be include water surface lighting measurements, um, to check the reflection and see if the reflection from the water can have an impact on swimmer or people's safety. Also to explore any glare and lighting uniformity. So make sure the lightings are uniform. That's something we can look into in the future. Also to assess the black disk visibility for swimmer safety as well. Next, please. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today, and we really appreciate you spend the time joining us today. And I want to say thank you to City of Markham and their staff at all these 6 indoor pools and their cooperation as well. And then also thanks to Lifesaving Society for this opportunity to present and show our research. Lastly, I want to thank all the survey participants, as well as for Dr. Han, who um, who really included me in the study and really be part of this study as well. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, here's the perfect time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Everyone in attendance, this is a great time to use your React feature and give them a round of applause virtually or send a thank you in the chat. But we will open up the floor to some Q&A, some questions. I do actually have one while those are typing theirs out that came through during the presentation. I have it jotted down here. So speaking to the lighting, are there any instances or data where lighting or lack thereof has a direct or indirect impact on emergency situations? So maybe in doing your research on this topic, was there anything that alluded that? Potentially drownings, slips, trips, anything like those?
When I did the literature reviews, some of the incidents and accidents, the literature's mentioned as poor lighting can really, increase the possibility of like slipping events or tripping events. That was, yeah, that's all I can remember.
No, of course. I know when we were getting together to practice this and do our rehearsals, we spoke to the fact that there was very limited research in this space in recreational facilities in entirety. So I think it's a great place to take as a jumping point and have some more research be done on it. Turning our attention over to some other questions that have come through, was there any relationship to the lighting levels due to the age of the lighting fixture itself or the building? Having some lights be LED, mercury, halogens, etc.
That I'm not sure, but I think I came across some studies mentioned that LED might be the best, but not specifically in the indoor pool facility environment, but they've done studies on other environments such as like roadways or parking lot, places like that.
Perfect. Moving along here, so it looks like just a comment here, so the majority of the provinces do require the lighting minimums that are measured at the surface of the water or the deck. They seem to range between 200 and 250. I know we had some comments that in Saskatchewan and in Alberta, it's actually 215. Just that's province dependent. So has any information or study been done with lighting levels under the surface of the water? So with many municipalities looking at stainless steel pools as well as deeper pools, what are requirements would be required for those lighting levels at potentially 3 meters, 5 meters, 8 meters in depth? Not sure if maybe just if you've seen
That
any
that
detail.
I'm not sure, but if you guys look up the European standard, which is on slide 8, I think on their on this standard they categorize into different pools. So there's the competitive pool environment, and there's like the recreational pool environment. So based on what category the pool is in, there's different lighting levels required for this specific pool. But I'm not sure if the surface of the pool have any impacts on lighting.
Okay.
If I can add one other thing, Nico.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Please.
don't know the instrument that we use is even waterproof, so that's one of the reasons why we didn't collect lighting levels at the surface, just because we only had access to that particular instrument. So
Yeah.
it got wet or damaged, then we couldn't continue with the study. So certainly great points, and that's one of the reasons why we did not collect surface measurement levels in case of damage to the particular piece of equipment. So
Noted. So it sounds like your next study, you're going to bring a Ziploc bag and do some underwater readings. All right. Next question here. So we have a public health engineer, and they mentioned that during the review and approval submissions for pool construction, it's the responsibility to review the lighting levels in and around the pool area in accordance with that model aquatic health code that we may be familiar with. Do you have any info or guidance on colored underwater lights and how they capture into the white light or the lux levels?
No, I don't have. Yeah, I don't have knowledge on that because that's way technical on the engineering end.
There we go. Sounds like we have a lot
But
of
that's something
speakers.
we could look into. That's a really good question.
Yeah, no, all this. I had a question myself. When you were doing your study, I know there's been a lot of mention about lighting levels being tracked on deck level as opposed to surface level. Was there a certain height that you held the apparatus when you were taking your readings?
Yeah, it's not a specific height. I just held at my chest level. That's one of the guideline on the Canada Health and Safety Regulatory website. So that's the guideline I use when I carry out the measurement.
Okay, no, noted. I'm sure the equipment itself would probably have best practices or what they recommend to get the best readings as well. Equipment varies pool by pool, province by province. So do take a look at that as well. Any final questions? Any burning points that want to be made? Drop them in the chat. What I've done here is we just have our speakers and their contact info in the event that you have any questions specific to the lighting adequacy, feel free to drop them an email. They may be able to look into it and get back to you. I'm not seeing any. Oh, there we go. We do have one. So the diagram provided showcased light readings on deck and surrounding area. In my experience, staff collect lux readings in the actual pool, including the center of the pool. In this research project, was there a discussion upon the need to assess in-water readings?
Not in this research project, but that's something we can discuss in the future, and that's something we're interested in the future as well.
Yeah, I think it's Nico, I think it's important to know that this was just a pilot study, and that I think the results are highlight that there aren't areas where improvement is necessary. So a lot of these questions are really great questions, some things that we can consider exploring, but we do need to make sure we have the proper instrumentation to do that, as well as the cooperation of the facilities, you know, in order to collect the underwater data, especially, you know, in terms of when's a good time to do that, et cetera, et cetera. So certainly something to think about, but that was a lot of these things are beyond the scope of our current study, because we just want to see what are the lighting levels relative to that Ontario Building Code 200 Lux. And then all these other things that are being brought up again are really great. And certainly we can consider exploring it if, again, facilities are interested in pursuing that. Our contact information is there, and we can see if that is possible. So.
Awesome. Maybe a great place for those who might want to volunteer at their facilities for those future studies. We do have another one. What types of light fixtures were noted, whether it's direct or indirect? I'm not sure if I quite got the gist of that one. And fixture placement relative to pool tanks. That may be in reference to height. Was that any consideration that was made during that data collection portion?
So I'll answer that. So no, that we did not take that into consideration, but again, something that a more detailed study in the future, we could consider doing something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a comment in the chat that light fixtures are typically over the deck, so getting the proper light levels over the pool is a little bit more challenging. To Megan's point earlier, I remember being in the pool with a flutter board and getting the light meter all over certain places in the tank, so definitely a great addition to any future studies. All right, thank you very, very much. Unless I see any more questions pop up, I want to thank our speakers. Thank you for joining us, preparing, enlightening us, and we look forward to any future studies that might come our way. We seem to be a keen bunch with just judging from the questions that we're getting. So thank you. Again, if you want to reach out to Dr. Hahn, to Allison for any future questions or to volunteer your pool, by all means, go for it. Their contact information is there. But on that note, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your days. Enjoy Valentine's Day in a few days for those who celebrate, and the long weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Nico, for hosting this presentation.
Absolutely. And thank you to everyone behind the scenes who's made this a success. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a good one. Bye.